Maybe you've heard this story before. Once upon a time, there was a very unhappy girl named Cinderella. For on the evening when all the royal subjects attended the prince's ball, poor Cinderella was ordered to stay home and finish her never-ending chores. Earlier that day, as Cinderella helped her stepsisters prepare for the ball, she held a wish that she too might be able to attend. She imagined dancing with the prince himself, but her imagination could only take her so far. The flames of her dreams would fade like cinders in a fireplace. Young Cinderella's greatest wish was granted that night when, as legend has it, her fairy godmother appeared to magically transform an ordinary pumpkin into a magnificent coach, and the old rag she wore into a fabulous gown. She also gave her a curfew. The handsome prince had all but given up hope of meeting the woman of his dreams when a vision of beauty made a spectacular entrance. Cinderella and the prince looked into each other's eyes and both instantly knew that they had finally found each other. They danced all night as if they were the only two people in the entire kingdom. Time had lost all meaning until... Uh-oh, what was it the fairy godmother said about staying out past midnight? Was it magic? Fate? Or was Cinderella just a klutz? No matter, she had left behind a single glass slipper, which would be proof that the fantasy was real. The prince tried that slipper on every young maiden in the kingdom, until he finally placed it on the foot of his beloved, Cinderella. You probably already know what happened next. Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after, because after ever, my mom and dad had me.
The Adventures of Cinderella's Daughter. The sequel to Cinderella that predates the Disney sequels. It is live action and it feels more like a Saved by the Bell ripoff blended with Cinderella than an actual fairy tale. The story takes the idea of where Cinderella was a peasant girl who ends up in the palace. Her daughter, who's named after her, Princess Cinderella the Second, nicknamed Cindy, is a princess who would like to be a normal teenager. Yeah. It has 4 basic stories just kind of squished together, and they don't all fit. In particular, the second story, which has Cindy competing with her cousin for a spot on the cheerleading team, and her cousin, who is afraid that if Cindy competes against her, she's definitely going to get a spot, somehow puts a curse on Cindy, turning her into a beast. So not only do you have the inversion of the Cinderella story, but you also add in a little bit of an inversion of Beauty and the Beast. Or not really that, even, just like referencing it. And also this movie likes to reference Romeo and Juliet. And it's just, the movie is all over the place. Music upbeat and campy, doesn't feel like a fairy tale at all. The costumes look like it's supposed to be a French period piece, but the quality of them is that of like a high-end Halloween costume. The acting is mostly blah, with a few good performances, like maybe a couple performances that's good, and a few really, really, really awful performances, particularly Cinderella's wicked stepsister, who does most of the speaking of the two stepsisters, whose name I don't remember, and the Cindy's cousin, Daphne, yeah. Now, to be fair, the cousin character's acting is not nearly as bad as the wicked stepsister, because the wicked stepsister somehow is like a cackling witch, and it doesn't make sense, which, you know, most of this movie doesn't really make sense. It's kind of sad. There's a few good ideas, like the wedding warlock, and I think this is interesting because I've watched both of the Disney animated Cinderella sequels prior to watching this, so I checked to see the dates. And like I said, this movie came out in 2000, and the Disney animated movies came out in 2002 and 2007. And in some ways, you kind of feel like there's some similarities, but not really. For example, in the Disney Cinderella 2, Dreams Do Come True, or whatever the subtitle for it was, you have basically 3 unconnected stories just told together. And in this one we have 4 stories, and some of them are connected and some of them don't. And then in Disney Cinderella 3, which I think is called A Twist in Time, you have a what-if story where Cinderella's story is told completely like a different version of it, because the wicked stepmother gets a hold of the fairy godmother's magic wand and turns back time so that she's trying to make the prince fall in love with one of her daughters. I think it's Anastasia. And so that happens in the Disney ones. In this movie, The Adventures of Cinderella, you don't have time travel, but you have the wedding warlock, and one of the stepsisters, on the eve of Cinderella and the prince's wedding, summons him. And basically this ties into our story because Cindy is pining after her own love, and she's talking to her fairy godbrother, Fred, who is the son of Cinderella's fairy godmother. Yeah, this is how weird this movie is. Okay, so her and Fred are sitting together. They're admiring how lovey-dovey and mushy the king and queen, you know, Prince Charming and Cinderella are after 20 years of marriage. And so Fred's like, and imagine this almost didn't happen. And Cindy's like, really? And so Fred just like shows her, not exactly through a crystal ball, but through kind of a crystal cell phone thingy, a flashback. And so it's like they're standing there as they're watching this, but of course nobody else sees them or anything. And of course they're talking over some of the events that's happening, and through this what-if story. So it's kind of interesting because there's no time travel, so you don't have these alternate timelines or anything, but you have the stepsister summoning the wedding warlock, and the wedding warlock and the fairy godmother pitting against one another to see who will win, true love or jealousy. And it has some interesting ideas in that. The wedding warlock, the actor who plays him, is one of the best performances in this movie, and the stepsister is the worst performance. Again, I think I said that already, but it bears repeating. Interestingly enough, the wicked stepmother, not in this movie. I don't think she was even at the wedding. I mean, maybe an extra or something was supposed to be her, but as far as I can tell, the stepmother, like, she is supposed to exist because she's mentioned in the open narration, I believe, but she doesn't have a single scene. And it's also interesting because I'm not sure how this cousin character, Cindy's, fits in. Is she supposed to be the daughter of one of the stepsisters, or did the prince have a brother or a sister? I mean, either one is possible, but they never really make that clear. So yeah, there's just, and the character herself is just stupid. Like, she's just this petty one-dimensional character, and that's like this problem with this whole movie. Most of the characters are one-dimensional, very poorly done. Acting does not help at all. And the worst of all is Prince Charming. Like, this is the first Prince Charming I actively dislike, because he's just, it makes no sense at all. In order to set up the story of Cindy feeling like she's trapped and wanting, she has this desire to be normal, to hang out with just, the average teenagers in the kingdom, and her father is opposed to this. And there's no reason for him to be opposed to this. He married Cinderella, and yet he's supposed to be prejudiced. And, like, this is, like, one of the plot points that just keeps coming up. And then suddenly at the end, again, it's just... I've had this problem with most Cinderella movies. It's like the endings are just, like, rushed. This is like the worst case, because basically you have the character who is the foil, the king, the Prince Charming character, the guy who married Cinderella, completely opposed to his daughter having interactions much with the normal folk in the kingdom, the peasants, the lower class, the entire movie, and then the final thing, he just turns on a dime. Without any real reason. I mean, nobody made any case any different than what they said the whole movie long. They also raised this character of, like, this prince character who is trying to win Cindy. But Cindy's not interested in him because she's already has a crush on this Gavin dude that we've met from the very start of the movie. And it's like, it could have been interesting had Dimitri, I think that's his name, have been introduced earlier in the movie, and we actually developed, like, relationships. And again, it's like stuff's happening, but there's no real relationship developments between anybody. There's no real character development for anybody except for, amazingly enough, Cinderella herself. During the flashback sequences showing her the eve before her wedding and her wedding day and stuff, we dive into Cinderella's inner conflicts and concerns about whether the prince loves her for her, or if his falling in love with her was part of the magic, the spell, and everything. And, it doesn't actually get super deep, but it's the deepest it gets for any of the characters. So between all of that, it's just like, this movie, it's not the worst one I've seen. This is the 5th movie I'm reviewing, and its lowest score was 1.5, but my next one that the review is going to be posted on Thursday is even lower. Yeah. Anyway, if you see this movie, let me know what you thought, and if you haven't seen this movie, I don't recommend it. I mean, I really don't. It's just ridiculous.